Welcome everybody to a new Ink Panels graphic novel book club. As you can tell, we are missing somebody. Unfortunately, Gambit had I'm not sure if it was work related, doesn't really matter. Life came up and he can't be here. But we are here and you are here with us, and that is what matters. And we are talking Batwoman. Weirdly, it's Batman Day. This was not planned.
It was, it's funny because I didn't even know that today was Batman Day. It's a little bit low on my radar. I feel like it should be higher on my radar. I don't know. But anyways, when we were picking, like going over like the books, I was like, oh, like at first I'm like, oh, even though it's not Halloween, hey Scott, I was like, let's go ahead and read Long Halloween. And you and Gambit were both like, sorry, Jennifer.
We already did it.
We already did it. And I'm like, okay, I'll think of something else. And I'm like, you know what? Let's do Batwoman. We were originally going to either do this book or Dune. It was Dune last week. And then this was supposed to happen today. I didn't even find out that today was Batman Day until this morning.
Same
when
here.
John's Comics with Kids was doing his show and he said something about Batman Day. And I'm like, it was meant to be because Batwoman is much better.
So Batwoman was introduced in the 52 weekly comic book that came out. I believe Keith Giffen did the art for her in that first appearance.
It was awful. I hate the artwork for that so much.
It was not great.
No, not at all. And the character herself, like the Batwoman character was obviously introduced a very long time ago. Like in the 50s.
And Kathy Kane.
Yeah. And then I really don't know like kind of what happened to her from then, but during the New 52, like in that 52, 1, 2.
Well, pre-52, she was short stories and detective, and that's when Greg Rucka and J.H. Williams III took over her. And that's when she literally became a very important character. Greg Rucka, like if you have not read Elegy, and the way he writes his female characters.
Oh, 100%. I almost chose Elegy, but I'm like, nah, I think I'm going to go with Hydrology. After reading this, I'm like, man, I kind of wish that we had either done like a double feature and had also done Elegy, because I feel like that is the superior story, maybe.
Very much so.
I don't know. Am I allowed to say that? Fuck it.
I think you can. Not a slight to J.H. Williams and W. Hayden Blackman writing this, but Elegy was so heart-ripping, especially when you go into her backstory in the military, and very much goes into the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which they reference in here. This does have a horror-related story to it, which I like. And J.H. Williams III, his artwork, I've loved since Promethea.
Yeah. Yep. I remember when I was living up in North Florida, and at the time I had pretty much, this is obviously in the late 2000s, like probably around 2008. I had only really been reading trade paperbacks up until then, and then I went into a shop, I saw Batwoman, and I'm like, I need to get this. And that was kind of the start of a pull list. Like I was still trying to figure out how comic shops worked. And like I had been in a couple and mostly read trades, but I remember adding Batman Detective Comics onto my pull list because it had Batwoman, but I went in like mid-arc, I guess. I really don't know. And then ended up putting Batwoman on my list. And I remember getting into an argument with the guy at the shop about it. Because I'm like, oh, I want the Batwoman detective comic. And he's like, there's no such thing. And I'm like, but what? So anyways, that's young Jennifer.
For anybody who hasn't read it, though, like pick up Elegy if you really want to get into it. Because again, Greg Rucka is an amazing writer, and adding that to J.H. Williams III's art is it was a match made in heaven. And even though it started as backup stories, like there's just so much going on, the family dynamic and the origin, like seriously go back and then read this as well if you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Also, want to take a minute. Tara, Film Noir Girl, you message me all the time on Twitter, and you really don't have to text me to apologize for not being able to watch live. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's super sweet. Just watch it on the replay and let us know what you think. Like,
exactly.
But very sweet of you constantly to tell us how we're doing, and just it's very sweet that you're like upset about missing it. It's just it's super sweet. But I just wanted to, instead of messaging you, put this out there.
We know that you're here. We know that you'll be watching on a rewind, and we know that you're here in spirit.
So I'm gonna ask you like a devil's advocate question: is Batwoman or Swamp Thing more important to you as a character?
I think that not necessarily that it took me a while to realize my love for Swamp Thing, but I think that Swamp Thing is layered. Alex DeCampi messaged me. We'll talk about Swamp Thing. But I think that this one is important to me in a way that this was really one of the beginnings of like my comic book journey, and is like the next step after like Sandman. So anyways, like it started off with like Sandman and Fables and like those Vertigo titles and Watchmen. And then this came out and I'm like, I need more Batwoman. Like I love this character so much. So I think that Swamp Thing wasn't necessarily like there or really present during the beginning of my comic book journey. But I would say, so that's an easy question for me, right? So like Batwoman is obviously more important. Now, if you ask the question, which one's more important, Death or Batwoman? You would literally see my body start ripping apart trying to answer that question right there. Like that's a really tough one.
It's interesting when I've talked to people about Swamp Thing. It's a book that they always find after the fact where they're like, well, I read Watchmen. It's like, but have you read Swamp Thing? And they're like, no, like it was when we did the Swamp Thing, the anatomy lesson, just because we had so many people that never read it. And they're just like, wow, this is actually like really good. But it's not like the Alan Moore they know, where it's this weird love story.
And it's a lot more like when I think of Alan Moore, I think about taking these like the superhero genre and really like turning it on its head, especially with Watchmen and a little bit with Promethea. With Swamp Thing, he kind of does that, but I also think that he really does this monster love story, like monster gothic horror love story is what I get from his Swamp Thing. So I think I wouldn't, if someone was like, I want to read Alan Moore, what should be the first thing? I would be like, duh, Watchmen. Like, don't, Swamp Thing, take a little bit of time and get to know that.
So one thing I was worried about when we were getting this book was, is your average reader who's not read Elegy going to be able to jump into this and understand the character, which they do kind of go into what happened in Elegy a little bit and explain it out. You don't get the full detail of like what's going on with her dad. And her guilt over her sister, but it gives you just enough that you can kind of like get past it.
For sure. I said, this may be, I don't know, like not necessarily an unpopular opinion. It feels really weird to say, but I definitely think that after rereading this again, I definitely think that Elegy may be a little bit of a better story, whether that's Greg Rucka. He was supposed to be at Rose City Comic Con this last weekend.
He backed out.
And he was still on the thing, and I wanted to bump into everyone, but anyways, I wanted to cry in front of his presence and do the Wayne's World, like, we're not worthy. I was totally ready to do that in front of him.
Yeah, Mike Henderson from Nailbiter had to back out last minute just because he has a young child at home.
Same with Bendis, yeah. But I did get a chance to meet a lot of really fun people.
I saw David F. Walker.
That blew my mind. David Walker was very nice. I did interrupt him while he was eating his lunch, but I'm like, I'll come back. I'll come back. I promise. And he's like, no. And I'm like, no, like, eat your food, man. And he's like, nah, like, what's up? And then of course I had to be like, I love Bitterroot so much. And then anyways, so he was really great. And anyways, I met a lot of really fun people. I met Amy Reeder, and we bonded
Oh,
over knitting. I was like,
yeah, she
hey,
knits a lot. And
yeah.
then, like, I would have just gone on and on about Rocket Girl, how much I love that book.
That was what I took. She had some like what was it, like Ironheart and Amethyst stuff in front of her, and I'm like, I really love Rocket Girl, and she's like, oh. So anyways, yeah, I fan girled out in front of a lot of people this weekend, or last weekend rather.
Like, I had this weird thing at MegaCon years and years ago. It was like right before Identity Crisis came out.
Okay.
And having lunch with old comic shop owner that I used to work for and some other people I worked with. And there was this other guy at the table. And they started asking me about Wonder Woman. They're like, what do you think about Phil Jimenez's art? I was like, oh, he must love George Perez because clearly he's aping his art style.
That's the influence.
It was Phil Jimenez at the table with us, and they were trying to bait me into saying something bad. And then he had this huge discussion with us about Identity Crisis and what was going on, how he wrote this Blue Beetle James Bond story, and not telling us that he was going to kill Blue Beetle. Spoilers.
Well,
yeah, no, it's been 20 years almost. But it was just cool to have that kind of lunch in that moment and like not know who he was for like the first 10 minutes. And he ended up being like the most down to earth like creator I've talked to.
I love it. I also
go ahead.
I was saying I also got a chance to meet Scott, who's in the chat. I mean, granted, I met Scott at Free Comic Book Day last month, but then we got a chance to really hang out that weekend. So that was a lot of fun. That was my favorite part.
So with this book, again, there is a horror element to it, fighting a
I do wish, I'm sad that Gambit isn't here because this book does have a lot of Spanish in it, and I wish he was here to like correct my butchering.
La Llorona.
And because it's like, is it two L's or one L? And so I was like, is it Lorana? So I'm really sorry if I'm butchering it, but yeah,
I'm just remembering the movie that came out, the La Llorona. But the stealing the children and, you know, her tragic backstory, I really loved, and how like she was trying to bring out Kate's guilt, and then Batman's like investigating her, trying to figure out who she is, and then Betty, her cousin, who she's just like, your name's Plebe.
Your name's Plebes, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, she's so insulting to her constantly.
Yeah, and I get part of it because in this story, you know, if we want to go ahead and get into it, in this story, it starts out being narrated by Batman, and it's basically him being like a weird ass like peeping Tom almost on like all of these situations, and he's got his like file, and maybe it's because I'm going back and like rewatching Twin Peaks, but it just reminds me of what's his name, like with the recorder, and he's like, this and this and this is happening. Make sure I do this. Yeah. So for me, it was really weird not remembering how Batman heavy this book was, because like the first part of it is really just Batman narrating as he's watching, trying to figure out like, who is Batwoman? Is it Kate Kane? It has to be. Am I sure?
Agent Chase thinks it's Maggie Sawyer.
Yeah, yep. And so
we're going to go into the Maggie Sawyer thing because it plays a very important part of this title going down the shitter.
It does. It really does. We'll get into it maybe a little bit later in the show. We'll break everyone's hearts at the end.
Yes. So we get this start of a somewhat relationship between Maggie Sawyer and Kate Kane, where she shows up at GCPD. It was like, oh, it's Renee Montoya, Montoya's picture, and Montoya and her had a relationship at one point when both of them were basically alcoholics and party girls.
Yeah. It's funny in this book, and I think throughout the whole series, Even in like the new 52, like the 52 weekly ongoing series, and then this, they keep describing Batwoman as a socialite, but I never see her as like, I mean, maybe in 52 where she's just not drawn very well, they show her as a socialite, but I definitely think of her as more of just like going to a greasy ass punk bar more than
Yeah.
like a high class socialite.
In
So that was
52,
kind of
she was
weird.
a socialite, and then like once Rucka took over, it became this other thing where she would go out every now and again, just make sure she was seen out.
Hmm.
But like,
But she never dressed like high society. It was always like
yeah,
grungy, I
she was
guess.
going out, trying to pick up her
Pick up
ladies and hang
ladies.
out, and like kind of girl I'd hang out with as a friend who was like, you know what, I want to go to this scummy bar,
Yeah.
or I want to go see this punk band or whatever the fuck band it is, and just chill, have a couple of drinks, and go hide in the shadows and go home.
Yeah. Yep.
Which pisses Batman off, where he's like, oh, I lost her in the shadows. Her
Yeah.
dad's okay. Can you put change in my bucket? I was like, dude, like,
Yeah. That was a weird part whenever Batman is just like sitting there outside of her
the
house, I
building.
guess, just like waiting and watching, and it's like, Batman, how long are you there? And how, I want to know, because like throughout this whole thing, Batman's doing his like detective work, and he's putting on all the disguises, and at one point he disguises himself as a person experiencing homelessness, I guess, and he's like, I must have been real convincing because her dad gave me money, like put change into the thing. But I want to know, how committed was he? Like, did he really get like all of the aesthetics right? Like, do you think that Batman, like as one of the richest people in, or probably the richest person in Gotham, do you think that he was like, I know what it's like to live on the streets, because he spent like 2 hours dressed as a homeless person, and here he's like, I know the struggle and what it's really like, and those people, they just, it's a choice and they need to go get a job.
Oh god.
I imagine that's what Bruce Wayne was thinking after this experience. Like,
Well, when he's like watching her fight, he goes, okay, she's got some military. Wait, I've never seen that move
I've
before.
never
She
seen
invented
that move.
herself.
Yeah,
It's,
she invented that one all by herself.
there is a 2-page spread in here where she's fighting Agent Chase, where Agent Chase is just a fucking bitch. Like, she's written like that. She's got a tough boss in Agent Bones. But there's a 2-page spread where she's fighting Chase and beating her ass, and J.H. Williams, the way he arranges his panels, just makes this happen. Like, it so expressive, the way the kinetic energy of the page is.
Very kinetic.
And then like later on, her arms in a cast, she's like, listen, I don't have time for this. The Vicodin's coming. I'm coming down from it.
Yeah, she's definitely like, I love it though, and I can't remember. I wish I knew like more about Agent Chase and where that goes. I
She
wish that
comes
I
and goes in the books. Like, she had a series for a minute, like way back in the late 90s, but it wasn't very successful. And then she was in the Manhunter book by
okay.
Andraco for quite a while.
So DC, I think it's time, if she's still alive, and even if she's not, just
She's
fucking bring
featured
her
in
back.
Infinite. She's featured in Infinite Frontier right now.
Oh, okay, so that's probably why, because I'm not reading all them titles.
It's
Yeah, but it's funny that you talk about the artwork in Batwoman, because it's, if you're not used to it, you have to get used to the style. I guess I'll just bring up this page. I had to check for spoilers because it's read this way, like you read it here and then you read it down here, like this way up top and then this way down bottom. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because a really good book that came out a couple weeks ago,
Echolands.
Echolands, I actually have it right here because I bought an extra copy today. But Echolands is written that way, and that's how the artwork is. So it's very funny because J.H. Williams the third talks about how this was in the making when this was happening. So it's
Oh,
really interesting to see how you see that artwork in Echolands that came out a couple weeks ago, and this was obviously like 15 years ago. So,
And
or 10, whatever.
this is the scene.
Mm.
Like, just the way the flow of it works. Like, I just love it to death.
But I wish, I feel like they would have done this like style and format back then for Batwoman if they could. But I feel like because this is Image, and I guess it's more of like do whatever the hell you want, kind of.
Yeah. There's less editor intervention if there even is an editor, which there's books that have made me wonder if maybe there should be an editor. I'm looking at you, Mercy. And Deep Beyond, and I can keep going. It's a certain person involved with it. Every book they shouldn't be allowed to write, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Artwork's great though.
Oh, for sure. 100,000%. It's, it's funny that we've been talking about the kind of like horror plot. I really wish DC leaned more into the horror plot. I feel like lately in their books, they've really been leaning into like the politics of Gotham, which isn't necessarily too bad, but Batwoman just needs an ongoing title right now.
There is a corner of Gotham that should be, because like they say in this book, there's the underworld, but then there's the underworld. Yes. And like, I know there was a book that had like Killer Croc, Man Bat. It was like a horror book for, I forget what it was, but it was like the Gotham Underground, basically. Wasn't fantastic, but I think the last like real horror book that I remember was that Frankenstein book that they did for Seven Soldiers of Victory, and then I think the relaunch of New 52 when they had I, Vampire.
Oh, wow. I mean, not necessarily, like the current Swamp Thing is kind of horror-y, but
more psychological.
Not as psychological, yeah. But I wish that it leaned more into the supernatural than it does, because even the like Justice League Dark stuff, and even the more recent Constantine story that's come out, I felt wasn't as supernatural horror-y as this is. I love that gothic horror element to it.
I think Lemire did write the Frankenstein book, but he was off of it pretty quick because then he took over Animal Man.
Sounds right.
And then Charles Soule started doing Swamp Thing after Snyder left.
And sorry, my cat just like woke up from a nightmare or something. But it was just announced like 2 days ago that Jeff Lemire is going to take over Swamp Thing for Rom V. Or not like take over, but it's so he's going to be. It looks like whenever Rom V's Swamp Thing is done, then this new Swamp Thing that's going to be Black Label. It's going to be in the nice prestige format, and it's going to be a 3-parter. Jeff Lemire is taking over, or.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what his take will be, especially after this Rom V story. Like, is it going to be back to Alec Holland, or
yes?
Is it...
Mm-hmm. Okay. From what I hear, it's going to be Alec Holland based.
So Batwoman came back in Rebirth with Marguerite Bennett writing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love it, but I just don't think it was the right voice for the character. From what we went from with the character. Not saying it was bad, but I just felt it wasn't written with the right Kate Kane voice. Like,
and it's maybe that leans a little bit more into the Kate Kane like socialite stuff, because she's like off like
on
an island. I want to say Greece, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But it just feels like she's kind of doing the rich socialite thing. I really, really want. Here's my pitch, DC. I've been saying it for a hot minute, but I think that we do need to bring Batwoman back, and Gail Simone needs to do it for no other reason than Gail Simone writes red-haired characters real well.
I mean, if Greg Rook is not going to write it, then like...
No, give it to someone else. Give it to Gail Simone.
Well, no, I'm saying like she would be my next person on that.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I think Jodie Hauser would be a fairly good, although that book that she wrote for the Gerard Way, the Young Animal, was kind of like Batwoman a little bit.
Mother, it's funny, Mother Panic, I feel like that really leaned into Mother Panic being a much more socialite character. Like you see her being like richer, you see her going to parties and things like that. It really did. Jodie Hauser would be a good one.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of people I would trust with this character that I felt could write it. And again, I think she could bring it back to the horror element of it.
Yeah.
It's definitely I don't think I would have. Well, James Tynion, I think, could bring the horror element, but he's doing Substack and off of DC now, so that's not going to happen. I think he could probably get the voice pretty close, but the horror element, he definitely could crush, especially with Something Is Killing the Children and what he's done with Erica.
Yeah. And get into the mindset of that character who's been through trauma.
Yes. Sure. Again, this character has been underused. I don't think DC currently knows what to do with her.
No, and even she was in a book a couple weeks ago, Fear State. She was in Fear State and was literally in the background of one of the panels. And so
show all the Bat family.
Yeah, and that was it. It was all the Bat family there for just a little blip of a second, and there she was. So we know she's there running around Gotham. Stephanie Phillips, yeah. It's so funny. I talked to Stephanie Phillips at Rose City, and she was such a pleasure to talk to, and we waxed poetic about Publix chicken tender subs. I could talk to her about anything, and I'm just we've got to talk about a good pub sub.
You should be oh, my old show co-host kept going on and on about Butcher of Paris. He's probably one of 100 people who read that book.
Right. Sorry, I'm going to go off topic as per usual. I ended up, this past year, I've been catching up on, not catching up on, but I've been reading the new Tarna series, Tarna. And there was another book that came out 2 weeks ago that's a Tarna one-shot for heavy metal. And I'm fuck, I forgot that Stephanie Phillips wrote that. I would have talked to her about fucking Tarna.
I've not read it. I know Varangian Vigilante probably want to smack me for it because that's.
Ooh, Becky Cloonan could totally
Becky's doing so many books right now, writing with her partner. It's just because she just took on another book recently too.
Yeah, because she's doing Wonder Woman stuff, and then
she used to be Batgirl, but I think it's the Cassandra Cain book with Spoiler. I think she's writing now too.
Got it.
Her and her partner.
You know who maybe could do some writing and or drawing? I would 100% lean into Amy Reeder. And she does some of the artwork in this book here.
Yes, she does.
So I would love to see. I think that Batwoman should get one of those red, black and white series that they've been doing for all the characters. They're doing Wonder Woman black and gold, and
black
then
and gold.
Yeah. So I would really love to see Batwoman get something like this and just throw all the cool creative teams, but then Batwoman deserves at least one title on her own and just take one away from Batman and or the Joker.
We're not that show yet.
Yeah, we'll talk about goals in a little bit.
So I'm on the thing of I recommend this book to read, but at the same point I'm if you can get edition that has this and Elegy in it, which I don't think exists. There is an Elegy one but the only one available right now is the one with the Ruby Rose TV cover on it.
Yeah, there's I have it on my shelf. It's up there.
Yeah, because I know there's that version of Elegy, at least that was available right now.
Oh, so it's just going to have Ruby Rose on it. That's disappointing.
Yes.
I tried to watch that. So when the Batwoman show was announced, I'm I'm so here for it. I actually kind of like Ruby Rose. Like she's a cute little hottie, and I want to see it. I'm here for it. I've never liked a WB show.
Poorly written.
I've never ever liked any or WB. I'm sorry, CW shows. They've just.
I watched Supernatural for way too many years.
I can't. I couldn't get into it. I've never been able to get into Gotham, Flash, any of them. Any of them.
Like this could be a good HBO Max series if they leaned into the horror, like and like not pussify it.
What does that mean? Pussify it?
Well, make it more hard edge, not like
I don't know, man.
Not
Pussies
like
are pretty hard. They take a beating.
Not for TV. Like okay, not for basic TV. Like I want like if you could make it somewhere between like a mix of like horror but with the hard edge stuff of like the Daredevil show.
Yeah, like maybe
with that kind of action.
Yeah. Maybe I think HBO. So isn't Teen Titans on HBO?
No, yes, it's on HBO Max.
It's on HBO Max. And I feel like I'm still avoiding it because I'm like, it just seems too twee for me.
A little bit. The girl who's playing Donna Troy, though, I like saw her like a little trailer. I was like, she's fucking perfect. Like, okay. And I guess they had Red Hood show up recently. I'm like, I still can't watch it. I don't know why. Like, I have this weird aversion to that show, and I don't know why. Yep, people love it, and I just can't bring myself to watch it.
It looks so good. Another thing, talking about Gail Simone, I just read one of her like things on Facebook, and she goes into like how special Barbara Gordon was as a character for her, like growing up, and how she ended up, you know, creating like the Oracle character and how important that was. And apparently Barbara Gordon or Oracle shows up in Teen Titans, and I guess they gave the character the middle name Gail.
Oh.
In honor of her. And I'm like, for no other reason, I feel like I need to watch 3 seasons of a show now just to like get to that part because I think that's fantastic.
I also like the fact that she shouts out John Ostrander because Ostrander got super pissed off about what they did to Barbara Gordon, and then he did this issue of it's like Tales from Gotham or something like that, where he brought her back and went through her struggles of people treating her different because of her disability now. And she then became this computer expert and became Oracle in it. And he's like, I needed her to not be this sad character anymore. So he created that and then had her as part of Suicide Squad aiding them. So Gail always shout out that like without John Ostrander making that move with her, that, you know, she probably wouldn't have had Oracle to play with. And then taking Black Canary from being a girlfriend side character to making her this badass martial artist who, you know, took on Shiva. Like there's a Gail Simone book called Leaving Megalopolis.
I've not read that one.
It's fantastic. And then they had a sequel to it that came out. Dark Horse did it.
Okay.
It started out as a Kickstarter, though, originally, and then Dark Horse picked it up after the fact, and then did the sequel. What was that book that we did with Gambit about the superhero turned bad?
Not Irredeemable, or
yes, it was. I think it was Irredeemable.
Because there's Irredeemable, and then there's Incorruptible. Is that it?
I think that's the sequel. That's Irredeemable the sequel. Was it?
Yeah.
So this is more like this city, like. All the superheroes that are like Justice League analogs turn evil and take over the city. And like basically they made it like a no man's land. Nobody's allowed in or out because they're so evil. Like they rip apart people. There's like their version of the Flash that like ate a person.
Yes.
It's awesome.
This is what I need to see adapted. Like, see, I could see that on HBO Max easily because I think anything like dark, gritty, R-rated, where this I can't see as R-rated.
It's more PG-13.
Yeah,
you get your one fuck.
You get your like one like cute little like sex scene between the gals as the other gal is just It's a couple pages. It's, but then at the same time, you're also seeing Flamebird just beat to an inch to death in the same thing. And you're like, this is hot. But I mean, like, the other girl's getting her ass beat while, like, Batwoman's just having an orgasm.
And after Batwoman repeatedly saying, like, don't go out there. You are not, like, I thought I burned that uniform.
Yeah, and she because in the scene where in this book, whenever Batwoman is beating the shit out of Agent Chase,
Yes.
Like Batwoman beats the shit out of her and then comes back home to Flamebird and is like, no, just we're not doing this anymore. You're not doing this anymore. Burn everything. Like, no.
Yeah, and then like when Agent Chase, she goes to Jacob Kane, the father, and he's like swimming. She's like, "Hey, this pool's for enlisted only." She's like, my Viking is starting to wear off, Colonel, so I don't have time for you to be cute with me. Just answer my damn questions, sir." Yeah. Like
I
Chase takes no shit. Like, and I love the way she is written in this because there are times where she kind of seems more like a flunky. This one, she's like Scully if Scully was like having a real bad day.
Yeah. Yep. I also think when I was reading this, it reminded me um, a little bit. I could see Tessa Thompson playing her really well. Maybe it's just because of like the suit and the way
Men in
that,
Black.
yeah, the Men in Black. I could definitely see someone like Tessa Thompson doing this role. But I mean, of course, Tessa Thompson is much, dare I say, cuter, where Agent Chase is like a lot more like straightforward and just.
What was the actress who in Constantine played the angel?
Not Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
I think Tilda Swinton is a little bit too old.
But the intensity, like if you took it back like 20 years.
Yeah.
Brie Larson could probably play this role fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just like dream casting everyone that I want to play this.
Yeah, like Kate Kane, I don't know who I would ever cast as that. Like I'd have to be like real particular about who it would be.
DC, I know one of y'all are watching. Hear me out. I need a, what is it, department, DEO, Department of whatever the department is in this book with the
oh god,
so anyways,
yeah.
Skullface dude and Agent Chase need to be like, we need to see that like in a department, I don't know, buddy cop movie or something like that, or detectives like X-Files, but DC. Hear me out. Do that, but with Suicide Squad, and then put Amanda Waller in there.
I would totally take a DEO show written by Rodney.
Oh yes, let's make this happen.
Because he'd bring the horror.
Get Rodney on here right now.
I'm gonna be working on that one the next run because I got to talk about Thomas Jefferson with him. Like I really do. Plus he's got all this stuff coming out, and he moved to Substack, which also is
I think that there's a book coming out in 2 weeks that's a Star Wars book that I ended up buying only because it's Rodney Barnes. It's like one of the War of the Bounty Hunters ones, and I'm like,
the Army of Darkness book.
Oh, that
and then the Nita Hawes book comes out.
Oh,
the spinoff in October 24th.
Excellent.
So the thing now we're going to go into is we start the romance of Maggie Sawyer and Kate Kane. This DC fucked up huge with this, and so it got to the point where there was going to be a marriage. It was written, art had started, and then they sent a memo saying, no, you can't have these two get married
because they need tragedy. And
characters don't get married.
But like I not necessarily that I understand that, but I get that like tragedy kind of has to be a plot point. But I think that Batman and Catwoman have had a long enough romance. Even if they didn't get married, they were still allowed to have romance.
Yes.
And we don't get that with Batwoman
No, it
and
like just
Maggie.
was done, and just like that, Greg Rucka and J.H. Williams III, like, okay, fuck you, we're out.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no problem with them leaving and taking a stand when it came to that, because
Yeah.
literally there's been nothing but tragedy for Kate Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing but tragedy.
And especially for a queer character. I mean, I think about one of the reasons that pulled me into it was because Batwoman was a queer character, and it just felt like to have that really, really strong representation, which you don't always get, just to have another queer tragedy story fucking sucks. Like, just let them be gay, you cowards.
I think that was mostly what it was about, because they were going to be a queer couple getting married, and I don't think they wanted to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, I love they had a picture with Kate wearing the tuxedo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was awesome. And then just an issue or two later, it just, Maggie's gone.
Yep.
Just
Spoiler.
Yeah, like, it's bullshit. And again, like, I have no problem with Greg Rucka and J.H. Williams having at least, the money's not enough to make us, give up what we believe in. And I respect the hell out of them for it. And you'll never hear me complain about it, other than, boy, that was sad that they left. Like,
I do appreciate that. I think that this book is still true to that and still true to that spirit. And I've talked about it before, how this book is kind of like that capsule in time. And luckily, I think a lot of queer folks don't have to remember a time when gay marriage was not legal, and when policies like don't ask, don't tell were a thing. And so the entire plot point of the previous book basically was that Batwoman becomes who she is because she dropped out of West Point because of the don't ask, don't tell policy, which, like, kids these days don't really, I don't think that don't ask, don't tell is on their radar.
Clinton era, if I believe.
Yes, but I think that it was repealed during Obama, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's funny that, like, if this book was written today, what would that look like? Like, what would be the thing that maybe excuses her from West Point?
You have no idea.
Like, that's the entire plot. And, there's this really powerful moment where she is being confronted about her queerness, and she's like, I'm not a liar. Okay, well, you can either be a liar and lie about who you are and adhere to the don't ask, don't tell policy, or you're not a soldier anymore. And she's like, fuck you. I'm still going to be a soldier, but I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to do it truthfully and be who I am. And I think that that was such an important part of the character. Um, Oh, hello, John. I was just, well, not just, but I was talking earlier about how I didn't know it was Batman Day until I watched your show this morning. And happy, if Charlie's there, happy belated birthday.
Oh, happy belated birthday, Charlie.
Ooh, maybe she objects to drone strikes. Yeah, and especially, maybe the situation that's going on in Afghanistan and those types of politics. Yeah.
Maybe she's a anti-vaxxer and believes in taking horse dewormer. Like,
No.
I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I unfortunately read that Nicki Minaj thing the other day.
Oh yeah, where her cousin's friend's testicles swelled up.
Yes, and then I found the Hardy Boys meme of Nicki Minaj's cousin's friends got big balls. The mystery of, like, I was just like, okay, this is too good. Like, but luckily that supposed ivermectin sterilizes men who take it, so cool.
Well, maybe that's a good thing because it also makes you poop yourself. So we don't need idiots procreating.
No. So again, I probably I think this is a good read if you're looking for something a little horror related.
Hmm.
I'd say on my rating, I'm probably at about a 7.5 on it, but Elegy is easily a 9.5. So do yourself the favor and pick up Elegy
Yeah.
and then pick up this.
I would
By
also, sorry,
Go ahead.
go on.
Go
No,
ahead.
you go on.
I forgot what I was going to say, so go ahead.
I was just gonna say I would 100% agree with those ratings. Maybe bump this up a little bit closer to an 8. Um, I would probably recommend Elegy more than I would recommend, this one's Hydrology, not to be confused with Elegy, which is technically the one before this. I would recommend this one for anyone who wants to get to know Batwoman and anyone who is like, hey, like, do you have any recommendations for female superheroes? Like, duh, here you go. Especially if, because I think Marvel does a lot of female superheroes. Like there's 100 I could easily list, and then DC, Wonder Woman, and I would also say Batwoman is very, very high up there for me.
So the thing with some of the Marvel female superheroes, I feel they're written other than that new Black Widow series, which like got really good after issue 4.
Yeah.
I feel they're kind of vapid to a degree.
There's a lot of the female characters that I really appreciate, like female superhero characters that I appreciate over at Marvel, but I feel like a lot of them are cut and paste, where they feel like those paper dolls to me. Like they're all the same background character. You're just switching their outfits a lot of times. Like maybe you're just switching how they look. Um, there's there's a lot more nuance to that, but um, I love a lot of those characters, but for me, I think Batwoman, and especially because she's a lesbian, I think that just stands out to me a little bit more.
Like I think for a female superhero, if I was gonna pick something like kind of in the vein of Batwoman, or if you like that, if you like Wonder Woman and want to see Alan Moore's take on it with J.H. Williams art, Promethea
Promethea, yep.
is fantastic. Also, Bendis, Alias.
Hmm.
I think
Jessica Jones, yeah.
Jessica Jones, like the book is a little bit more dirty than the show was,
Yeah.
but written very well.
Mhm.
Like they give her a personality that she has her flaws and very much deals with her demons constantly. And I also really like Pearl,
Yeah, Pearl was good.
which now Dark Horse has,
Oh.
and it's coming back out again.
You know, since we're talking about like Pearl and Bendis, I would also one of the underrated series in my opinion, and maybe I just hold it in a high
Scarlet.
regard, um, is going to be Kabuki by David Mack.
Oh,
I think it's a
100%.
completely underrated series. Um, I was reading that around the same time that I was reading like Sandman and Fables and stuff like that. So there's like a special place for it. So I would maybe, if you're thinking not necessarily female superheroes, but like female like assassins and stuff, 100% I would recommend Kabuki by David Mack.
Kabuki, I think, weirdly got buried because there was that like kind of backlash about the whole bad girl thing that was going on at the time, where like it came out and they were just like, ah, not like
Yeah.
whatever, and it kind of got
A femme
buried,
fatale type stuff.
sort of, because there was the whole Chaos Comics thing that was going on, and then it was just like, here's bad girl, here's bad girl, and then God, the Image stuff coming out at that time was fucking horrible.
That and
Like,
I'm not exactly sure when it happened. Like I was reading Kabuki in trade, so I really don't know the whole story, but I think changing publishers too because it's gone from like
three
Image
or four
to
times they
Dark
changed
Horse and now
publishers.
it's back to Image, I think, and it's confusing.
Yeah, I want to say it changed about 4 times. Hey Perry, I'm trying to think of another like female-led book that, I mean, other than like Birds of Prey by Gail Simone, which if you haven't read her original run, is just fantastic.
Gotham Central, which you
Yes.
recommended to me last year.
Yes. Which it gets heavy, especially with the Montoya stuff in the with her outing in it, and the whole weird Harvey Dent stuff that is so fucking cringy. Yes, Gotham Central, Montoya, again, like a flawed protagonist. But when you start going into what she was dealing with her family and everything else, I'd also recommend The Other History of the DC Universe.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Which had the Renee Montoya issue. There was the
I keep
Katana,
wanting to say Wasp, but it's not.
The Katana Bumblebee one. Which made the Teen Titans look like the shittiest people on Earth.
Yeah. Yep. I'm trying to think. I'm like
Lazarus by Greg Rucka again. Old Guard. Yes, a Lazarus gore is incredible, and it's still going even though it's on and off. Modesty Blades, I don't think I ever. I don't think I have any recollection of that. I might have to look that up now that you recommended it, especially when you say it's the gold standard.
Ooh.
So Jennifer and I are on a clock today because our next show starts at 10:15. So we have kind of a hard out today. Yes, we're doing Dune Messiah. And if you want to hear us talk a bit with Carlito on our movie show next week about David Lynch's Dune, that's what we're doing next Saturday, which will eventually turn into us talking about Jodorowsky's Dune and the 14-hour movie he wanted to do.
And then The Inkle, and then Fifth Element.
Yes. And then what was that? Valerian and the
Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets.
Yeah.
Or I mean, Evangeline, Valerian and Evangeline.
Valerian. Yeah, there was a couple, and then we'll inevitably talk about how Jodorowsky got ripped off by Alien, Star Wars, and everything else.
Flash Gordon.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you need any recommendations for books, like feel free to message us on Instagram or just comment and we will hit you back on it.
Carrier pigeon, send me a smoke signal. Send me one of those like burn upon reading things. I don't know however you do those. And
actually, I actually just thought of a book that I really enjoyed for most of it. The Batgirl series, that was the Cassandra Cain series, I actually kind of really liked at the early stages of it. I'm like blanking on books, but I know there's other ones. I mean, I could almost say Saga if you wanted to go there. Like, oh yes, I have thoughts on this. I am so fucking happy, and yes, a 14-year-old boy and his 36-year-old lover who turns him is going to be interesting. And if they go with how the series is, where eventually Hunter Rose dies and the legacy of Grendel goes on, so season by season, it could change and eventually become Christine Spar, who fought a kabuki vampire that stole her son's eyes and killed him. We lost Jen. Maybe that's a sign. Yes, I'm very happy about Grendel coming, and the casting, actually, I saw Matt Wagner was very happy about the casting of the young Hunter Rose. And if Matt Wagner's happy, maybe this will lead to getting Mage. That would also make, I don't know if a middle-aged guy who looks like Kevin Smith with a baseball bat that's basically King Arthur's Excalibur is something everybody's looking for.
I could see it has its audience. Like, it has its solid TV audience for sure.
I have never heard of this. Something is killing the children. What is that? Although Nice House on the Lake might have overtaken that for me.
Yeah, I see that.
Hey, Eva. Nice House on the Lake, I think, is one of the best horror books that like keeps me kind of on my toes guessing.
Yeah.
There's also the weird little bit, what's the M. Night Shyamalan movie, Signs?
Yeah.
It kind of gives me a little bit of that vibe.
Okay. It's been a
Sorta.
minute since I've read Signs. Or
Just a
watched.
little bit with like how everybody doesn't know what's going on and they're kind of like watching TV.
Piecing it together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to call a night and then we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes so that we can kind of do what we need to do before starting the next stream. If you want to hear about Dune, join us and the other 3 people. I was like 4 people. We have a great panel where Scott will be with us and Read Across the Stars and Cartoon Sid, who we haven't had on for a minute. Well, okay, we had her on 2 months ago, but who's counting? So go pick up this book, pick up Elegy.
Pick up Elegy and then pick up Hydrology.
I've almost left without announcing next month's book.
What's next month's book?
So for Halloween, I've picked Witches.
Oh, excellent.
By Scott Snyder and Jock. And we have our guest already planned for next month. It will be Adriana, Pretty Nerdy, whose YouTube channel, Take 5 with Pretty Nerdy, is just started. So go subscribe to her. Also, she's probably going to talk to you a lot about you picking up the first Swamp Thing because... Jen made a huge purchase last weekend.
It was very huge, and I did it the first day of the convention, and I had a budget for the convention, and I even told my partner, I'm like, because I kept asking, they're like, what are you looking forward to? And I'm like, well, this, and then I'm also, I'm looking, I think that I want to go ahead and bite the bullet, and if I see House of Secrets 92, I'm going to go ahead and buy it. And I'm like, so my budget for the con is this, but if I see House of Secrets 92, my budget immediately gets doubled. And then that budget pretty much all got taken on the first day. So
and then Morbius Comics is like, you take that receipt and put it on the fridge. You said you put it on the fridge.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, my partner was there and he's like, are you gonna get it? And I'm like, I cannot stop thinking about it. I'm having a heart attack thinking about not getting it. And I think that I just
getting it.
And then a heart attack, literally like giving the person my card. I'm glad I did it though. I probably paid too much. I definitely paid the con tax on it.
Well,
but...
no, because what Adriana, the one she almost bought, was 0.5 less than what you got.
Okay. Yeah, because mine's a 6.0, so hers is a 5.5?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I made the mistake and started looking at Sandman 1 before the Netflix show comes out. And that 9.6 for 600, I sat there and I started thinking about. And then I showed No Good Comics. He's like, I'm pulling the trigger. I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, I think I'm buying it. I was like, no. Okay.
I saw a couple of those at the con, and I did see Sandman 8 for I think I saw it for like $800 as a 9.8. Yeah.
By the way, Saga of Swamp Thing, the most expensive book right now is the first Constantine.
Oh yeah, yep.
That sucker is like at $3,000 right now.
I definitely should have bought that like a year ago when it was. You probably could have found it for like $40.
It was still pretty high, but not anything like it is now. And I'm like, is Constantine coming back that I don't know about?
I think it's just first appearances in general are skyrocketing no matter who they are.
The first appearance of Lucifer in number 4, I found a 9.6 for Sandman for like $250.
Ooh.
It's not bad.
I would say if that's a book that you want and $250 is something that's in your budget, buy it, because if it's something you want, you're not going to be able to get it for that price again.
He's a key in the Sandman universe no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. Okay. We have got to go, and if you
join us for
15 minutes-ish, we will be back. Take care, and we will see you next month. I'm planning somewhere close to October 30th for the show. So, see ya.